Welcome to Trigger Warning with your host, Chris Brumbles. Are you tired of the professional liars of fake news and far-left radicals? Are you ready for truth and common sense? The insanity and divisiveness of political correctness and identity politics have no place here. So welcome to Trigger Warning, where free speech is free speech, not racism. There are no participation trophies, so if your mind is weak, grab your binky, head to your safe space. Consider this your trigger warning.
Good afternoon, Columbia County, and welcome to Trigger Warning, where we reject political correctness and insane left-wing policies as we embrace truth, common sense, and this great country we call America. I will be taking the month of December off to spend some time with my family and hopefully take care of some medical issues, but we'll be back sometime in the 5th of January to get things rolling again. Well, pay-to-play slow Joe Biden is calling for unity and peace now that he thinks that he's won the election with his illegitimate running mate. So let's get this right. He and his anti-American Marxist cronies have been attacking our president and his supporters since before he was even elected. We've been called white supremacists, racist, and many other pejoratives for years with absolutely nothing to back it up. Patriots have endured censorship, which is ongoing still and worse than ever. Fake polls, voter fraud, divisiveness that started with Obozo and continues from the left today. We have watched as our streets are swarmed with these Marxists as businesses, livelihoods, and families are destroyed with no accountability or possibilities to recoup their losses that took some a lifetime to achieve. They've attacked our churches, indoctrinated our children, told their followers to harass anyone who doesn't agree with their insane ideals. They are doing all they can to totally extirpate individual liberty from our society and the outcome of the Revolutionary War, while they maintain a strategy to sell us out to China and continue on a path toward a one-world global communist order. They hate us, they hate our country, they hate our president, they hate our children. And their attacks will not dissipate anytime soon because they are haters and want total social and political control by any means necessary. When they say they want unity and peace, what they actually mean is they want total, unconditional surrender of all your principles and ideals, your morals, your Americanism. These people are lying, duplistic, entitled, manipulative, divisive, cheating, racist morons that don't believe in logic, reason, reflection, history, common sense, or even God. And we, the real patriotic Americans, will never surrender to them because we have lived in liberty, and once you have lived in liberty, you will never accept chains, which is what they want. By the way, they are bloviating about the fact that they are making a list. They are filling this list with names of anyone who worked for, voted for, or supports Donald Trump. This list is a revenge list. This from the people who want unity and peace. I don't think so. Quick word to the Marxist. You haven't had any consequences as of yet because you are protected by traitors. But mark my words, if you poke the bear long enough, you will awaken the sleeping giant, and the consequences you will bear will be devastating. The good news is that without the voter fraud, it looks like President Trump won by a landslide. And I believe at the end of the day, he will win this election, and our country will be safe from these clowns for another 4 years, at least at the federal level. Moving closer to home, there are rumors that Crazy Kate Brown is living it up in Hawaii while she left our state in another illegal shutdown. Now, those are rumors. I don't know if that's true. While she is off having fun, she is continuing her destruction of lives and businesses here in Oregon. You know, a couple of years ago, Crazy Kate signed an illegal anti-gun red flag law that violated at least 6 amendments to the Constitution on the guise of suicide prevention. But how many suicides are directly related to these illegal shutdowns? From what I have read, a lot. There are even more people not going to the hospital when they have sign of a heart attack or stroke. This is not just illegal and immoral, but much more dangerous than any perceived threat of a virus. The so-called cure, which will not cure anything, is much worse than the illness. The politically motivated media-driven scamdemic is responsible for more deaths than if the government would have just done nothing. But like always, when their policies don't work, they double down regardless of the cost. Insanity. We need to wake up, America, and remember who is the boss. The government only exists because we created them and allow them to exist. We need to remember that we created them for one reason, to protect our rights. But we are only receiving despotism, usurpations, and tyranny. The one world order criminals are using this created crisis to enable a great reset, and as I said, a one world global communist order. This is un-American, unacceptable, and undeniable attempt to totally reshape the world and furnish the chains that they have been forging for years. At some point, we are going to have to stand up and tell the government to go to hell. We do not elect kings. We are a free society, and most of us have allowed ourselves to be duped. Truth and courage win the day. They are trying to steal everything that is ours and our children's, not to mention the only hope of the world. If they are successful, there will be no more liberty throughout the world. There will be no more bastion of freedom, that is America. No more Constitution or Bill of Rights protecting us. No more America. And we will all be drinking from the cup of sorrow forever. Not going to happen. I have faith in the American people, her great patriots, and most of all, the creator of everything. If the current despotism continues, at some point the largest standing army in the world, the U.S. veterans and patriots, will have had enough and rise up to restore this country. Liberty is far more popular than slavery. It has been all through history, still is today. Today on the show we have the great KrisAnne Hall, a real constitutional attorney, not one of these fake constitutional lawyers that have never read the Constitution. KrisAnne Hall was born and raised in St. Louis, Missouri, and began her career as a biochemist, Russian linguist for the U.S. Army, and a prosecutor for the state of Florida. KrisAnne also practiced First Amendment law for a prominent national nonprofit law firm. KrisAnne received her undergraduate degree in biochemistry from Blackburn College and her JD from the University of Florida Levin College of Law. KrisAnne is now the president of Liberty First University and travels the country teaching the foundational principles of liberty and our constitutional republic. I actually had KrisAnne Hall come to St. Helens a couple years ago. Well, it was more than a couple years ago, several years ago, where she was very well received. KrisAnne is the author of 6 books on the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. She also has a nationally syndicated radio show and a cable television show. KrisAnne has been featured on C-SPAN TV and C-SPAN Book TV. KrisAnne will connect the dots for you like no one else can. Host of the KrisAnne Hall Show, she pulls no punches, puts liberty first, and gives no quarter to those who hide behind party labels. Like no other host, KrisAnne will tell you what the founders had to say on today's relevant issues. KrisAnne is a disabled Army veteran, a mother, a pastor, and a patriot. KrisAnne lives in North Florida with her husband, JC, an evangelist missionary to Haiti, and former Russian instructor for the U.S. Navy. Wow, they both speak Russian fluently, and their adopted son, Colton. We will also be bringing Rob Taylor on the show later to join KrisAnne and I with a kind of roundtable discussion about the say-so that we just passed in our county. Rob is a great patriot who has a radio show in Coos County called the Rob Taylor Report on KWRO. Rob runs the website Coos County Watchdog and has done great things for Coos County and Oregon. Rob actually started the SAPO/SAYSO movement here in Oregon that started in 2014 or 2015. I didn't jump on the bandwagon until I heard about it several weeks later. This country is in a serious constitutional crisis and being attacked from within. War has been declared on us by the Marxist-leaning, self-appointed autocrats, and education will go a long way to resolve this situation. Please stick around to listen to both of these great patriots that are doing everything that they can to save the republic. We will be right back with KrisAnne Hall on Trigger Warning.
Hello, all you triglets out there listening to Trigger Warning. This is where we reject political correctness and left-wing insanity, but instead, we embrace truth and common sense. You know, there is only one gun group in Oregon that will not compromise on your rights, and that is Oregon Firearms Federation. With all the trickery and evil bills that come from the supermajority in Salem, You need a friend who will keep you informed of these nefarious plans to plunder your rights. If you have not done so, don't delay. Go to OregonFirearms.org and sign up for the free alerts. It will cost you nothing, and you will get the truth on what's going on in Salem. There is absolutely no common sense in giving up your rights, so sign up for our email alerts, and if you want to donate, we won't complain, and it will be put to good use. Oregon Firearms Federation, the only no-compromise gun group in the state of Oregon, at OregonFirearms.org. Sign up today. Northwest Observer, another great news source that tells it like it is. Give it a try. I'm sure you will be impressed. It's time that we have truth in the news. So go to Northwest Observer and give Redoubt News a shot, and you have nothing to lose and only facts to gain. Now, back to Trigger Warning, where we reject political correctness and left-wing nut job policies, and we embrace truth and common sense. With your host, Kris Brumbles.
Welcome back, Columbia County. We are here with the Honorable KrisAnne Hall on the phone. And KrisAnne, welcome to Trigger Warning. I'm honored that you agreed to come on the show with very little notice, and I want to thank you for all that you do.
Oh, no, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much.
And hopefully your family's doing well?
Oh, yes, sir. We are all well.
You know, I don't know if you remember or not, but we brought you here to Columbia County. I was thinking it was 2 years ago, but I'm thinking it's more like 5 or 6 years ago. And
yeah, I don't know either. It's been a while, but we do come to.
Well, people are still talking about
that area.
They loved you here, and we'll probably have to get you here again sometime. But
oh yeah, we need to get back soon.
I'm sorry.
We need to get back soon.
Yeah. Well, I actually listened to listen to everything that 3 constitutional lawyers say, and Edwin Vera Jr., Publius Hulda, and you. And I got to tell you, I use that word, we don't elect kings, a lot. I've stolen that from you. I hope you don't mind.
No, please.
It kind of makes the point.
Mm-hmm.
There's just too many people calling themselves constitutional lawyers today that haven't even read it. So I guess I saw this video you made the other day. I believe it was called Lessons for Our Neighbors in Oregon. And
Yes.
It talked about how the governor is violating our Constitution and acting like well, you couldn't decide, you said queen, but I don't know if she knows if she's a king or a queen. She kind of floats both ways.
Oh.
And I was wondering if you could go over some of that again and educate our listeners.
Sure. I think the video is really good that I made on my YouTube channel because it actually shows you the language itself. So what I did was I simply copied and pasted from the Oregon Constitution. And that's the way I prefer to teach because, like you said, there are a lot of people out there that claim to be constitutionalists, claim to be constitutional attorneys, a lot of armchair lawyers and political activists who don't understand the concept between politics and law. And so I like to teach where I show you exactly what I'm talking about from the exact text of the Constitution so that you can tell people that this is what the Constitution says rather than saying this is what KrisAnne Hall says. Because if you use my name, especially in Oregon, you're going to call all kinds of rats out of the woodwork to come cast stones and call names. So it's better that I have people teach what the Oregon Constitution says and not just simply what what KrisAnne Hall says. Right. And it's really easy. All you have to do is go in your search engine and search Oregon Constitution. It pulls up right there in front of you from the OregonLegislature.gov website, and right there in writing, you copy and paste it. You can learn from it, but it's really, really important because, I've been teaching for 11 years cross-country. I've been doing more than that for longer, but cross-country. And most people study their U.S. Constitution. Very few actually study their state constitutions. And right now, we have to admit that we've lost more liberty at the state and local level than we have at the federal level in the last 6 months. And that comes because we don't know our Constitution. So basically, the Oregon Constitution begins, as every state constitution begins, with a Bill of Rights.
Right.
Some constitutions call them Declaration of Rights, some call them Bill of Rights, but they're all there. And they all mirror the U.S. Bill of Rights because the U.S. Bill of Rights mirrored the state Bill of Rights of the 13 states that existed before our federal government.
Well, they actually took them from the state. The state submitted their ideas. Yeah.
Right, exactly, from the states that existed prior to the federal government. A lot of people don't realize that we actually had legally operating states for 13 years before we had the federal government that we have today. So what we have now is the Bill of Rights. But I think to start, it might be better if we start with not just simply understanding, because I bet most of the people who listen to you understand that they have the right to freedom of religion, the right of freedom of worship, the right to speech and press, the right to be free from unreasonable searches and seizures, double jeopardy, the right to peaceable assembly, and petitioning the government for redress of grievances. So these are all the basics. Everybody knows these things. Or if you don't, you can go to the Bill of Rights and look at them. But I think what's important for us to start is starting with Article 3 of the Oregon Constitution, moving into Article 4 and Article 5. Because Article 3 of the Oregon Constitution establishes an incredibly essential and important principle. Right. And that's Article 3, Section 1, separation of powers. And it reads, the powers of the government shall be divided into three separate branches, the legislative, the executive, including the administrative, and the judicial. And no person charged with official duties under one of these branches shall exercise any other function of another, except as in this Constitution expressly provided.
Right.
So what we have is this really, really essential principle of separation of powers. So if you move from Article 3, which is our separation of powers clause, to Article 4, we learn in Article 4, Section 1, that the legislative power, which is the lawmaking power, is reserved to the people through the Senate and the House of Representatives. So lawmaking is the job of the Senate and the House of Representatives. You move to Article 5, and you see in Section 1, the chief executive power of the state shall be vested in a governor who shall hold his office for a term of 4 years. And so what you have then is the legislative power is reserved to the legislative branch. Executive power, which is the power to execute laws, shall be vested in the governor. Not the power to write laws is vested in the governor, but the power to execute laws. And that preceding Article 3, which establishes the separation of powers, specifically does so to keep legislative power and executive power separate. Because when you have the executive branch having the authority to write laws and the same authority to execute laws, you now no longer have a governor, you have a king.
Right.
And that's the reason why separation of powers exists, is to eliminate the tendency, or at least reduce the tendency by supreme law of the land, because the Constitution of the state of Oregon is the supreme law of the land of Oregon, and by constitution and contract to eliminate, if not just simply diminish, the possibility of the governor establishing power over time to become king or queen.
And that doesn't even, so they wrote an excuse me, they wrote an emergency thing. And oh, by the way, I went back and looked and see who wrote these emergency, whatever you call them. They're not. I think they're illegal laws. So I don't want to call them laws. But guess who wrote it? Secretary of State Kate Brown and Treasurer Ted Wheeler, who are now the governor. Yeah.
But these emergency powers acts are also unconstitutional, right? Because what you have is the legislative branch creating law outside of the power that's delegated to them. You see, the legislative branch, if you read Article 4, legislative branch is not delegated the authority to change the power of the governor.
I agree.
To change the power of the governor, you would need an amendment to the Constitution. So the legislature does not have the constitutional authority to add to the power of the governor, nor do they have the authority to take from the power of the governor. And so these Emergency Powers Acts, remember the Separation of Powers Clause specifically said that you had to have a specific clause within the Constitution to change separation of powers. There is no emergency clause in the Oregon Constitution that allows, number one, the legislative branch to add to the power of the executive branch, or for, in emergency, for the executive branch to have the authority to write law. So none of those things are constitutional. And so what you have is the Emergency Powers Act is outside the Constitution, which makes it, per se, unconstitutional, and it makes it a law that is null and void, because anything that is written contrary to the Constitution cannot have the force of law, because the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and a law that circumvents or contradicts or even replaces the supreme law of the land is not a valid law.
Right.
And so that's where we have to understand that even if someone says to you, well, what about the Emergency Powers Act? You have to simply say, well, the Emergency Powers Act is written outside the Constitution, so it's unlawful. If we want to add power to the governor, then we have to amend the Constitution to do that. And, the consequence is very strange, because people want to have the legislature add power to the governor. But how many people would say that it was that it was okay for the legislature to take power from the governor?
That's a good point. That's a
natural conclusion. If they have the authority to add it, then they also have the authority to take it. And they don't have that authority. It's not delegated to them by Constitution. By the way, the legislature adding or taking power away from the governor is also another violation of separation of powers. So when the governor issues an executive order and expects that order to be enforced as law, that order must be seen by the people, by the sheriffs, by those who are to enforce the law, the orders as law, as unconstitutional and unenforceable. They must refuse to comply.
Oh, I'm glad you said that. I hope there are some people out there listening that are wearing badges too. So, the funny thing is that there are two kinds of so-called emergency powers in Oregon. One of them deals with hurricanes, earthquakes, stuff like that, and the other one is for health. I guess I'm going to have to hurry this. We got about 2 minutes. And so she chose to do the one for earthquakes on this because the other one is limited to 28 days. So she got sued in court, lost, and of course she went up to the Supreme Court of Oregon, who were appointed by her, and they basically stopped. They just basically said no, she gets to do whatever she wants. And so our judges are failing us. You can see what's going on in Oregon. We got a bunch of Marxists running Oregon, and we're not getting the rule of law we're guaranteed under the Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution. We don't have a Republican form of government here. And so we're at a loss of wit's end. We've tried to recall her 7 times. We've passed, you'll find out here in a little bit, Second Amendment sanctuary ordinances. We've done everything, and they just keep doubling down.
Well, here's the key. All right. Article 1, which is your Bill of Rights, Section 1, declares that all men, when they form a social compact, are equal in right, that all power is inherent in the people, and all free governments are found on the authority of the people. So what you have to understand is your authority doesn't rest in the courts, nor is it dictated by the courts. Your authority as the creator of government exists in natural law, but also is enshrined within Article 1, Section 1 of your Constitution. So you are not a slave to the court, and that's specifically done on purpose by those who created our constitutions, because they knew throughout time that it was the common means of acquiring power was for the executive branch to unite with the judicial branch, so that the enforcers of the law and the judges of the law actually rest in the same governing authority. And that's what you're describing to me.
Yeah.
So the solution to your Oregon problem rests with the inherent understanding that the beginning of all government power rests in the people.
Right.
So the solution is not to run to the corrupt courts and then bow down to them as if they are an oligarchy. The solution is what I call peaceful noncompliance.
Yeah.
It's not civil disobedience, because that word disobedient implies that you're disobeying something. You have no requirement. There is no requirement of rational, natural law of constitutional basis for you to submit to a law that has no force of law at all. I mean, think about it. What do I have lawmaking authority in Oregon?
Nope.
Obviously, I do not. So if I issued upon your radio station, an edict that said, every hour on the hour, you must give praise and thanks to KrisAnne Hall. And if you do not comply, I am going to fine you, and I'm going to take your property.
Well,
now,
KrisAnne, I'm going to have to cut you off there.
With that?
I'm going to have to cut you off there for a minute. We're about a minute over, and we got to go to commercial break. But we'll be right back with KrisAnne Hall. Thank you.
Hello, all you triglets out there listening to Trigger Warning. This is where we reject political correctness and left-wing insanity, but instead, we embrace truth and common sense. You know, there is only one gun group in Oregon that will not compromise on your rights, and that is Oregon Firearms Federation. With all the trickery and evil bills that come from the supermajority in Salem, you need a friend who will keep you informed of these nefarious plans to plunder your rights. If you have not done so, don't delay. Go to OregonFirearms.org and sign up for the free alerts. It will cost you nothing, and you will get the truth on what's going on in Salem. There is absolutely no common sense in giving up your rights, so sign up for our email alerts, and if you want to donate, we won't complain, and it will be put to good use. Oregon Firearms Federation, the only no-compromise gun group in the state of Oregon, at OregonFirearms.org. Sign up today. Northwest Observer, another great news source that tells it like it is. Give it a try. I'm sure you will be impressed. It's time that we have truth in the news. So go to Northwest Observer and give Redoubt News a shot, and you have nothing to lose and only facts to gain. Now, back to Trigger Warning, where we reject political correctness and left-wing nut job policies, and we embrace truth and common sense. With your host, Kris Brumbles.
Welcome back, Columbia County. We have the great KrisAnne Hall here, and we cut her off kind of in the middle of a thought. Do you remember what you were speaking of? You were talking about the rights of the people.
I do.
Yeah, okay.
I do.
Would you like to finish that?
So if I wrote to your radio station and said you have to, and on the top of every hour you have to give homage to KrisAnne Hall, and if you do not, I'm going to fine you. Mm-hmm. Would you be subject to that law?
I don't think so.
No way, because I have no authority to write that law. So when the legislature writes law that's contrary to the Constitution, when the governor creates acts that are contrary to the Constitution, that would be the same as me issuing some kind of edict onto your radio station, because it has no basis in authority in law. So we are not being disobedient to legislation. We are not being disobedient to the governor's orders, because the orders themselves are disobedient to the supreme law of the land. So what we are doing in exercising peaceful noncompliance is enforcing the Constitution, because our legislative and executive branches are violating them. They are being disobedient. So the real solution to the people, when, as you said, the courts have been corrupted, they no longer stand for the rights of the people, but do the bidding of the executive or the bidding of the legislature, then because Article 1, Section 1 of the Oregon Constitution reminds us that all government power is derived from the people, it is absolutely your authority to simply refuse a lawful, legal constitutional authority to refuse to comply with laws that are contrary to your Constitution. And we call that peaceful noncompliance. because it's not Antifa, it's not BLM. We're not burning down donut shops and stealing televisions and destroying the local AutoZone, right? What we're doing is standing in our own businesses, standing on our own property, and refusing to comply with what we call pretended laws. Because remember, we don't elect kings, we elect governors and legislators.
I love the way you put stuff. So, right now, folks, we're going to bring in Rob Taylor. He just came on the line, and we're going to kind of have a little roundtable session and bring him in. How you doing, Rob?
I'm doing pretty well.
Before we talk about the say-so, we're talking about the illegal orders, I guess you'd say, the governor who, I hear she's in Hawaii now. I don't know if it's true or not, but
that's not true.
Oh, it's not? Okay. Well, we're talking about the illegal orders that she's doing, and I think the churches have failed us big time. Who ever thought they'd be shutting down churches?
Yeah, well, the interesting thing is and I mentioned this in my show and on social media, if we're honest, not a single governor, not a single sheriff, not a single legislator, not a single mayor shut down a church in our states. These churches shut down by their own will. And same with businesses. No businesses was shut down by any government agency. The business owners voluntarily shut down. Because the power of peaceful noncompliance is being proven across the United States. We just had, there's a video going around social media now of some business owners in Erie County, New York, who said, no, we're simply not going to shut down, and we're not going to let you shut us down. They actually chased the code enforcement and the sheriff's deputies out of the business. And I'm sure that that's not going to be the end of this, the harassment from the government. But nonetheless, that's where we are. And then, didn't I just read that you had some business owners in Coos Bay that refused to shut down their gym?
Absolutely. We have Cafe 101 and probably about, I would say, 20 or so businesses. Last night I was just driving by the gym, and it was full of people, and it just made me feel so good that these people are just saying, to hell with it, we're going to do business, we just cannot afford to shut down.
Good.
Absolutely, and that is exactly what we talked about. The first part of the show is peaceful noncompliance. And in unity and community with peaceful noncompliance, it really is the most powerful tool to control government. There is no more powerful control of government than the unified and educated body of the people. And that's what's happening in Coos Bay. The people are like, look, your threat, the code enforcement say, if you don't shut down your business, we're going to revoke your license. Well, excuse me, if I don't keep my business open, there'll be no license to revoke because there will be no business. We cannot afford to stay closed. So guess what? I'm keeping my business open. I'll take my chances with noncompliance, and we'll go ahead. We'll provide ourselves with generators for electricity if we have to. We'll provide ourselves with water if we have to. We can meet all our needs without your government permission.
The problem is, for most people, that they've already been shut down a bunch, and then they're using bureaucracies, to enforce these. Well, they're not even laws; they're just their rules, and they're threatening big, huge fines. And I understand.
You know what? What are fines?
Right.
What is a fine? Seriously, a fine is nothing without compliance.
Right. And
so, if you come together as a community, even the fines are not a threat. Because
I agree.
Like I said, it's the unity and community. If you're standing alone, you're not exercising the full authority of your constitutional republic. You're acting as if you live in a kingdom where you have to stand alone against the king. The purpose of our constitutional republics, by the way, every state is a constitutional republic in America.
Right.
And the purpose of our constitutional republics is so that the people have the liberty to stand in unity together against government overreach. And that's what we're seeing. So the whole community of Coos Bay says, you know what? Forget this nonsense. We're opening up our town, and we don't care what anybody says. And the members of the community just simply become the protectors of each other. And you know what? Fine us. Who cares? What are you going to collect it from? You're going to fine us, and then we don't have a business to pay it. So either you don't get the money because the business is closed down, or you don't get the money because we're not paying it. But either way, your fine means nothing to us because our individual property rights supersede your bureaucracy.
I
and
agree.
that's why it's having a better. That's why more people are standing up during this second shutdown, is because it's use it or lose it now. See, we've all spent our money and our savings for that first shutdown. Many of us just cannot afford to go through a second one. So it doesn't even matter if they fine us at this point, because you're right. If there's no business, it doesn't matter. I'm not going to have any money anyway. And I think if you get to a court and you demand a jury trial, I can guarantee you there's no jury in Coos County that's going to find a single business owner guilty of these fines.
I hope you're right. And, you know, that's what I want to do. I would love to get all the business owners in Columbia County together and say, let's tell them to go to hell. Let's just do it. So, before...
Can I read you something else from your Oregon Constitution?
Sure.
So this is actually still Article 1, but this is Section 18. So they say we'll fine you if you keep your business open. Well, Article 1, Section 18 says, private property shall not be taken for public use, nor the particular services of any man be demanded without just compensation, and without such compensation first assessed and tendered. Say, guess what? I'll pay your fine when you compensate me for the business that I've lost because you shut me down.
And you know what? We own a liquor store, so, you know, that state makes all kinds of money from it. But they've made us, well, not us, because my wife runs the store, because if I did, the state of Oregon would not be happy with me. Excuse me. But they made us, you know, let 2 people in, 4 people in, have somebody standing we're paying somebody standing at the door with probably one of the highest minimum wage laws in the nation now, just doing nothing. So I would like money back for that. I would like to add up all those figures and be...
Well, but you have to understand, this is taking your property.
Yeah.
The wage that you are required to pay is a taking of your property for public use. And you are entitled not only to just compensation, but just compensation up front. And I think that's the argument for your business is, all right, if you're going to demand that I have certain employees, then you're going to have to pay those employees for me. And I'm not going to have somebody doing that until you actually give me the money to pay somebody to do it. Because I don't need that as a part of my business. That's a requirement that you're imposing on me, taking my property of my money by government decree. And if you're going to demand that I do it, then you're going to have to pay for it. And I'm not going to do it until you do.
Well,
and the government shouldn't be happy with you. Thomas Jefferson said that if you're living in peace with your government, you're also living in servitude.
So, you know, people really need to go to your website and watch the whole video, because I'd like to switch topics, if I could, to the say-so, because we only got a couple minutes on this segment left. And so back in 2014 or 2015, Rob Taylor started the SAPO movement, Second Amendment Preservation Ordinance. And what that did was we got them on 8 or 10 ballots, 8 of them passed. And what that law said, it was a county initiative. And what it said was the county couldn't enforce any unconstitutional laws written since 2012, because we've had most of our bad gun laws, well, all of them are illegal, but the authority to decide what was constitutional was the sheriff. They made a big uproar, and then so Rob came up with a good idea to do a Second Amendment sanctuary ordinance, making all gun laws illegal with the exception of machine guns and felons and certain court orders, which personally I jumped on the bandwagon to help him. I mean, he came up with good ideas, and I just started helping him, and I've been lucky to pass both of them in my county. And so, Rob, you got anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, actually, Chris, I want some of your legal expertise. You probably know Michael Bolden, who's over at the 10th Amendment Center. We were discussing the anti-commandeering section of the SASO, and he said that the law was flawed because anti-commandeering wouldn't come into effect or come into play when you talk about cities or counties not allowing anti-commandeering of the resources from the state. He says from the federal, if you allow the state to do it from the federals, you're going to be okay. But for some reason, he thought if a county or a city did an anti-commandeering law like the Second Amendment Sanctuary Ordinance, that it wasn't going to be it was going to be legally challenged because he didn't think that the cities or the cities or the counties had a right to tell the state that they could not commandeer their resources to enforce state or federal gun regulations. And my question to you is, what do you think about the anti-commandeering, considering it from a local level from the city or the county, and if you think Michael is right on that?
Okay, we're going to have to hear the answer when we come back. We're going to have to take a break. We'll be right back with KrisAnne Hall and Rob Taylor.
Hello, all you triglets out there listening to Trigger Warning. This is where we reject political correctness and left-wing insanity, but instead, we embrace truth and common sense. You know, there is only one gun group in Oregon that will not compromise on your rights, and that is Oregon Firearms Federation. With all the trickery and evil bills that come from the supermajority in Salem, you need a friend who will keep you informed of these nefarious plans to plunder your rights. If you have not done so, don't delay. Go to OregonFirearms.org and sign up for the free alerts. It will cost you nothing, and you will get the truth on what's going on in Salem. There is absolutely no common sense in giving up your rights, so sign up for our email alerts, and if you want to donate, we won't complain, and it will be put to good use. Oregon Firearms Federation, the only no-compromise gun group in the state of Oregon, at OregonFirearms.org. Sign up today. Northwest Observer, another great news source that tells it like it is. Give it a try. I'm sure you will be impressed. It's time that we have truth in the news. So go to Northwest Observer and give Redoubt News a shot, and you have nothing to lose and only facts to gain. Now, back to Trigger Warning, where we reject political correctness and left-wing nut job policies, and we embrace truth and common sense. With your host, Chris Brumbles.
Welcome back, Columbia County. We were right in the middle of a question to KrisAnne Hall. We have KrisAnne Hall and Rob Taylor on here. And KrisAnne, do you remember the question?
I do, and to be honest with you, I can't really address what Michael said or not, having not actually heard what he said personally or read what he said personally. Right. But I can address the issue of state and local authority and local versus state. And I think and again, with the short amount of time that we have, you have to understand this is very 30,000 foot, very basic. Right. And so what you have to first understand is that states are established under two rules. They're either home rule states or Dillon rule states. Home rule states and Dillon rule states determine whether the state and local governments have a superior authority the municipalities and the counties have a superior authority to the state government on issues that are not actually already delegated via the Constitution.
So, I don't mean to cut you off, but I wanted to let you know that Oregon is a home rule state. We have 9 home rules by Constitution, and the rest of them are by statute. I just found that the other day. Okay.
All right, super. So in Oregon, the counties actually have a certain specific superiority to override state laws. Now, given that, what we now have is an issue of the state constitution and the oath of office, right? So the oath of office in Oregon means that everybody who works for government, state, local, whatever, I mean, even here in Florida, the guy who sprays for mosquitoes takes the oath of office. And so those people are taking an oath, a pledge to the superiority of the Constitution of the state of Oregon over any law that is contrary to the Constitution of the state of Oregon. So if you want to I think it's a matter of what you actually are doing. The local governments absolutely have an authority and a duty obligation to secure the rights of the people according to the Constitution of the State of Oregon and the Constitution of the United States. So it is well within the authority of the local government to say, we will not enforce laws that are contrary to our Constitution, regardless of who issues or writes them, which would also apply to federal laws that are exercised using undelegated power. So, for example, federal gun laws have no constitutional authority, therefore ought to have no legal authority, according to Article 6, Clause 2 of the Constitution, according to the Bill of Rights, to create laws regarding the people's rights or abilities to keep and bear arms. And so because the federal government is not delegated that authority, and in certain texts excluded from exercising that authority, it would be well within the right of the county and the municipalities to say, we will not allow those laws to be enforced in our town. Not just simply, you can't use our resources, but we are going to block the enforcement of those laws because our Constitution, our oath, and our duty to the people requires us to secure their rights when faced with any law contrary to our Constitution.
Right.
And so I don't think that when you start talking about legal terminology, there are nuances to these things, and I think that if you just keep it simple and simply understand that those who took an oath have an obligation and a duty to refuse to enforce any law, no matter where it comes from, that is contrary to the U.S. Constitution and contrary to the state constitution.
I agree. And Oregon has, in their Bill of Rights, Article 127, Section 27, they have a Second Amendment there that's probably as strong or stronger than the Second Amendment on the federal Constitution.
Well, what's really interesting is that most of our state bills of rights, declarations of rights, are actually better than the Declaration, than the Bill of Rights in the U.S. Constitution. They are more specific. They are more completely written, and so they're better. Now, in some states, they're actually worse. In Florida, our religious liberty section in the Bill of Rights is actually worse than the U.S. Constitution. So, but the key here is you have to know. It's like, I guess we're coming full circle because that's where I started off. You have to know these documents.
Right.
You have to not just simply operate off what somebody said to you. And please, don't be intimidated to know or to disagree with somebody who has a law degree. Okay? Don't be. If you are reading and what somebody with a law degree tells you, and it looks logically and critically contrary to what you're reading, then do your efforts to understand, to make sure that you're understanding the text properly. And then if you're confident that you are, don't be afraid to stand up and challenge people. Because most of your lawyers are just repeating what they learned in law school. And law school is not based on Constitution anymore. It's based on the dictates of judges.
That could be a whole topic right there,
Yeah.
Why are lawyers no longer taught the Constitution, because I've argued that with friends of mine who became lawyers but yet don't seem to read the same documents that I read.
Well, it was really a concerted effort, and we stopped teaching the Constitution in law schools in 1833. And you're right, that's a whole other class, but I know the exact year we did it. So.
Wow. Yeah, Edwin Vieira Jr., he has four certificates from Harvard. He said, he came out and said that when he took constitutional law, you didn't read the Constitution at all unless you read it yourself. Yeah, you just studied case law. And case law, he said that case law, Constitution is neither right or wrong. It just is. And case law can be wrong. And then, so now I see why we're so far away from the Constitution. You get one bad opinion, and then topped with another bad opinion, and pretty soon you're a mile away from the Constitution.
Absolutely, and it doesn't take long.
Yeah. So, you got any more questions for her, Rob?
Well, that was pretty much it, and I love the answer, Chris, because I thought you were absolutely right on target, and that was something that I told Michael about, and he's just he's going to be critical because that's just what he does.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I go to court, because I'm sure Chris may face a challenge, they may face a challenge in Umatilla, at least I want to be able to know kind of where to start our argument at.
So Umatilla County, I want to tell KrisAnne, it's funny, when the SAPO passed, and they did the SAPO and the SASO in Umatilla County also, they were saying, oh, you can't, the sheriff doesn't have the authority to disregard laws. And now that the SASO passed, the DA saying he's going to ignore it. So it's funny how they're on both sides of the fence there.
Yeah, no, they do it. They don't want. They say you can't ignore the courts, and then, we have Pennsylvania and California ignoring the courts. You've got your governor. She ignored the courts until she found a court that, she judge shopped and got the court that she wanted. So.
Well, I got quotes here from Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, and let's see, there's more. Andrew Jackson. They're all saying, yes, everybody from the dog catcher to the president, if they don't think something's constitutional, they're supposed to ignore it. And I agree with that.
Well, but here's the thing: your sheriff doesn't take an oath to the law.
Mm-hmm.
Your sheriff takes an oath to the Constitution.
That's right.
And when a law is contrary to the Constitution, according to his promise to the people upon election, is to uphold that Constitution, not the law.
And that's why this Thanksgiving is a perfect example of this, because our governor, our draconian governor, is telling the neighbors of people who know that their neighbor is having more than 10 people over to their house, or she's telling them to call the police. And most of the local police chiefs, especially mine here and my sheriff, KrisAnne, they've already said they will not enforce this, which to me proves that our Second Amendment sanctuary ordinance, or our Second Amendment preservation ordinance, is a valid law, because they can choose not to uphold the governor's edicts. Well, then they should be able to choose not to uphold unconstitutional gun regulations.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So, what do you think about the Second Amendment sanctuary ordinance? You think you guys want to do it in Florida? You probably don't need to in Florida. You got pretty good gun laws, don't you? Or
No,
I think all gun laws are illegal. But
we are on the forefront to red flag laws. We're the one that started the modern trend of red flag laws. We have terrible gun laws in Florida.
And that's another thing, now that you bring up red flag laws, it violates at least 6 amendments to the Constitution, and these people think
Absolutely.
it's legal, and then they come around and try to tell you your Second Amendment sanctuary ordinance is not legal. I mean, what a bunch of duplicity.
So, has that ever been...
No, we tried to get a Second Amendment Protection Act passed in Florida, and our Republican House, our Republican Senate, and our Republican governor refused to even address it.
Well, I'm going to have to ask you guys, do you want one real quick last question, Rob, or I'm going to ask you all to go ahead and put out all your information so people can go to your sites?
No, I really don't have any quick question. It's because it would take 10 minutes to answer it. So.
Well, why don't you start and put out all your information to everybody so they know how to listen to your show and get on your Coos County Watchdog and stuff.
All right. I appreciate that. Lars won't let me do that, but yes, I appreciate that, Chris. I'm Rob from Rob Taylor Report, which airs every Monday on KWRO in Coos County, Oregon.
Right. That's it?
That's it.
Oh, KrisAnne, you want to put out your information, because I think that you're one of the most important people in this country, and people need to listen to you.
Oh, well, thank you very much. KrisAnneHall.com, KrisAnnehall.com. We have a podcast that we do live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch. We're also on Apple Tunes, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, and a couple of other audio podcast services. We go Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time live, and then the recordings are put up on audio podcast that day, so you can catch what we're saying on your phone. We are also have online training of the constitutions at LibertyFirstUniversity.com. That's LibertyFirstUniversity.com, where you can go and learn with us through the texts of the Constitution, through American history, through what those who actually intended the Constitution, to mean. We learn directly from them. Everything is original source text, and it's self-paced, and we're doing a huge remodel So it's going to be absolutely fantastic. So that's libertyfirstuniversity.com. All our social media can be accessed through KrisAnneHall.com. But you won't find me on Twitter because I've been Twitter banned since August, and I don't know why. But I am on Parler, LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube.
Well, thank you. Well, hey, folks, I want to thank KrisAnne Hall and Rob Taylor for being on the show today. Two great patriots that are working hard to save this country and will join me on the firing squad if we lose this battle. I hope you all learned something and have been fired up to resist the tyrants that are trying to destroy our country. I'll be gone for a month of December, but we'll be back on the 5th of January. Until then, let's keep Columbia County normal and sane. I'll talk to you soon on Trigger Warning. God bless.
You've been listening to Trigger Warning with Chris Brumbles. You can email your comments to kohi.radio@gmail.com. And listen again next time for Trigger Warning with Chris Brumbles.